Welcome to PA History to Go, a series of videos presented by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission with funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. These short videos, filmed at locations along the Pennsylvania Trails of History, serve to introduce virtual visitors to our sites as we explore the varied stories that make up Pennsylvania's rich history. Watch them all to learn about the people, places, industries, and events that make Pennsylvania so special.
Most visitors who come to the Daniel Boone Homestead are confused about several things. First of all, they're confused about the fact that there is a Daniel Boone Homestead in Pennsylvania. They wonder about the connection, Daniel Boone in Pennsylvania, because most people associate Daniel Boone with Kentucky. And most people also simply don't know what Daniel Boone actually did. Daniel Boone, in fact, did have roots in Pennsylvania. He was born here at the Daniel Boone Homestead on November 2nd, 1734. His parents were English Quakers. And Daniel Boone was actually raised as a Quaker here in rural Pennsylvania. He learned certainly some of his woodland skills, hunting, fishing, trapping, etc. here at the family farm. And then in 1750, the entire family left Pennsylvania. They sold their land and migrated to North Carolina. And they moved to an area called the Yadkin River Valley, which was a really remote wilderness area. Daniel Boone was about 15 and a half at the time that they moved. In North Carolina, Daniel Boone kind of finished his boyhood years. By 1756, he had married Rebecca Bryan, who, by the way, was also from a Pennsylvania family. The Bryans were from neighboring Chester County, Pennsylvania. And Daniel Boone set up housekeeping in North Carolina and Virginia. By the late 1760s, he began going across the Appalachian Mountains into an area known as Kentucky today, and began taking long hunts. These were hunts which would last for months at a time. In 1773, Daniel Boone attempted to settle Kentucky, which was then part of Virginia. That 1773 expedition failed, but 2 years later, in 1775, he returned as an employee of a land company that had actually signed a treaty with the Cherokee Nation. And Daniel Boone cut the Wilderness Road across the Appalachian Mountains through the Cumberland Gap, an incredible accomplishment. And he then began leading settlers into Kentucky in the 1770s. That period, 1775 to 1783, of course, also coincided with the Revolutionary War. The Shawnee, whose lands they were really settling, had a legitimate gripe. The Shawnee were allied with the British, and so there were constant raids during that period of time. And Daniel Boone became a real leader of the Kentucky settlements and of the Kentucky frontier. During that period of time, Daniel Boone's daughters were kidnapped. He was able to rescue them. He lost 2 sons killed in the fighting, and a brother, one of his brothers who was born here, also died in Kentucky. Following 1783, the fighting kind of died down. And Daniel Boone became sort of a businessman, if you will, in Kentucky. He was a land investor, he was a trader, he continued to trap. He attempted to acquire lots of land, but he never achieved the wealth that he thought he would, and was somewhat disappointed at life. In 1799, he in fact moved to Missouri, where he spent the last years of his life. He died in Missouri near St. Louis in the year 1820, but during that time in the 1770s and 1780s, he was a really pivotal person in the settlement of Kentucky. Now, Daniel Boone never forgot his roots here in Pennsylvania. Twice during his life, in 1781 and later in 1788, Daniel Boone returned to visit his boyhood home. And in the 1788 visit, he actually brought his wife Rebecca and his youngest son Nathan. So I believe that this area was always very, very important to him, and his early childhood here formed a very, very important part of his life. So Daniel Boone was a pivotal person in American history and on the frontier. He was also an important Pennsylvanian as well.